Hello everybody, Happy New Year. Hope your 2021 is off to a good start. Because let's be honest, 2020 is a year I think we're pretty much happy to put behind us. Originally I wasn't going to do one of these videos. In fact, in my lists at the beginning of last year, I said I wasn't going to be doing one. The reason for that was, as I mentioned in that video, I had a new job. My work schedule was a lot heavier, and also I thought in the summer I would be moving to a new job, which would mean I'd have even less free time. But of course, with the global pandemic happening, Rachel and I we were stuck in China. We're still there now, so we ended up deciding to just stay for another year. And because of the lockdown situation, we had more time to just sit around at home, so we ended up watching a lot more films. So I thought, yeah, I think I've just about got enough for a decent list. Of course, a lot of movies were delayed because of the whole pandemic situation and cinemas being closed, so we didn't get to see as many as we wanted, but I still seen more than I expected to. So when I first did best and worst of list back in 2017, I'd seen 94 films that year. 2018 was 107 films, 2019 was 101 films, 2020 55 films. So about half of what I've been seeing over the last couple of years because of various circumstances, but I still think I've got enough to fill out two lists. And so because of that, what I've decided to do is I'll still do a best and worst list, but both are going to be top 10s. I'm not going to have any honourable or dishonourable mentions because honestly, even with the movies I have, some of them that are on these lists, I don't even have that strong a feeling for. They just happen to be the ones that I thought were the best and the worst. That's the problem with having seen less, about half as many movies as I had the last few years. The list doesn't feel as comprehensive. Don't get me wrong, there were still some great films and still some really bad films, but the movies at the bottom of the list, especially the bottom of the worst of list, my feelings are just pretty weak, in all honesty, but I still managed to put two lists together, so we'll begin with the worst of list. So the rules are a bit different this time because the last few years I've got to see a lot of films. This year, in order for it not to be so constrictive, what I've decided to do is list all the movies that were released in 2020 anywhere. They didn't have to be UK cinemas, obviously, because UK cinemas were closed for a long time. But as long as it was a movie that was released somewhere in 2020, and I seen it in 2020, it makes it onto this list. So I have my list, I have my notes, and I have my Bruce Wayne mug, so I think I'm ready to go. So as usual, let's kick it off with the worst of list, beginning with... So I seen the first Trolls movie a couple of years ago, and I just remember being very unimpressed by it. It felt just like a very generic animated movie. I have that feeling about a lot of DreamWorks movies. They just feel just kind of very bland. The first Trolls movie felt like it was more there to sell the soundtrack than it was to tell any kind of story. Trolls World Tour seemed a bit more interesting because the pop trolls are going up against the hard rock trolls. Now, I've been a big fan of hard rock my entire life, but unfortunately that kind of music doesn't really play a part. It's just, the hard rock is just there because it's not very mainstream. So they're just, those trolls are just meant to look like the outsiders. But the film felt just like the first one. It felt very bland. The characters were really annoying. A lot of the jokes didn't work. A lot of the conflict in the film just feels really, really forced. The conclusion and the life lesson is very predictable. And yeah, like I said earlier, the bottom of this worst of list. On any other year, this film wouldn't have made the list, but because I didn't get to see lots of films, it makes the 10 spot. But Trolls World Tour, I was just very unimpressed by it. So this is a film that's been in development hell for quite a few years. Honestly, I think maybe it should have stayed there. This is a very, very generic, very bland superhero movie. It feels kind of like what a superhero breakfast club would be, or a superhero One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. It's a group of superhero teenagers just being typical teenagers, really. Anya Taylor-Joy plays the kind of hard-ass bully kid. She's really annoying in this film. She's got kind of a wobbly accent, and she plays just a very one-dimensional antagonist who's just a dick to the main character for no reason. and then does a complete 180 in the third act because the movie needs her to be good then. But I think a lot of people just wanted to tune into this film to see what Maisie Williams was doing after Game of Thrones ended. But yeah, the reshoots are obvious. The storyline is not interesting at all. It doesn't make a lot of sense, and nothing about it is just very interesting. It's like I say, it's just a kind of bland, generic movie. And because it doesn't look like these characters are going any further, this film just serves to set up a bunch of characters and a bunch of storylines that aren't going to go any further. So there's almost no point in the movie existing at all. And honestly, it probably shouldn't have existed anyway. The second appearance by Maisie Williams on this list for some reason, there's really not a lot I can say about The Owners. It's a very bland, very insubstantial home invasion movie. A bunch of people break into a home. They find out the owners are kind of psychotic. There's some action. There's a lot of talking, and then it just ends. There's not a lot of analysis I can really offer because there's not really that much happens in the film. Like I say, it's mostly just talking. The old guy that owns the home, he just goes on. He's one of those characters who just goes on and on and on and on. You just get so goddamn tired of him. Aside from that, nothing else really happens. I don't know why Maisie Williams was in this. It seems it's a total waste of her talents. She's a much better actress than this movie shows. But yeah, if you want to see Maisie Williams doing well, watch Game of Thrones. Don't bother with this at all. So Beanpole is probably the most critically acclaimed movie I've ever put on a worst of list. It's up there with Tony Erdmann, which got a lot of plaudits back in 2017, but I absolutely hated. For this same reason as well, Beanpole is a really boring film. There was a film Rachel and I watched a few years ago called Cold War, which was only an hour and a half long, but it felt so much longer because everything took so long to happen. That's exactly what Beanpole is like. Every single conversation in Beanpole lasts about 5 times longer than it needs to because a character will say something, the other character will pause for ages and then answer. No conversations ever seem to happen at normal speed. It's like the movie is subconsciously padded, like it wants to be longer than it needs to be. It's a story about these two women who, they live in, I think it's Leningrad, following the end of the Second World War, and you think that should be interesting. It could show, it could show the impact of the war had on people and on the city and how everybody's tried to rebuild their lives. But no, the film is just a series of increasingly tedious arguments between the two lead characters, who are among the least interesting characters in the movie, but the film insists on focusing on them. It's very art housey. It feels very pretentious. There's lots of shots in the film that you look at and think, those are nice shots, but they serve no purpose. It's like the director's like, ooh, look what I can do. Look at these fantastic shots I'm composing, but they're utterly pointless and they wreak havoc with the pacing. And as the film went on, we just kept looking at each other and just rolling our eyes thinking, why is this movie still going? And then it ends and I felt absolutely nothing aside from anger. So yeah, I got a lot of critical acclaim, but for us, hated it. So I grew up watching reruns of Scooby-Doo cartoons. They were pretty good until Scrappy-Doo came in. And even as a kid, I hated Scrappy-Doo. But this new movie, Scoob, because it's got an exclamation mark, I couldn't stand this film. This was really goddamn irritating. While I said Trolls was mostly bland, Scoob was mostly really annoying, very hyperactive, very fast-paced, full of really bad jokes. Also, it's full of dated references. There's so many references to modern day things like Twitter and Instagram, which is funny because there's a line in the movie where Shaggy says something about a film. Oh, this film feels like it was written by 14-year-olds who think they know how 17-year-olds speak. And that's supposed to be a really clever line, but clearly this movie was just written by 14-year-olds who think that young people do nothing but talk about Twitter and Instagram. So I found that kind of bizarre. It's just so stupid. That's the best way to do it. It's just stupid and annoying. There's not much else I can say about it. I barely remember anything that happened in it, other than there's of course predictable third act breakups where characters fall out with each other for no reason, only to make up later, which just wastes time. But yeah, it's a really stupid film. Didn't enjoy watching it at all, and I was glad when it was over. Oh God, Cuties. Yeah, this man, did this film attract all of the controversy. If you've not heard of this movie, I'm sure most of you have. It's a film that's gotten a lot of flack for being basically sexually exploitative. The film is trying to be a satire on like the exploitation of young girls, but it feels very much like the film Showgirls, which, funnily enough, will come up in the next list. But Showgirls was supposed to be it's supposed to be a satire on the whole sleazy Las Vegas showgirl kind of experience, but just ended up being another one of those movies, and that's what Cuties does. It's really disturbing the way this film is directed. It's got a group of actresses. Well, they're basically young teens or 12 years old, kind of that area. And the film is just full of them wearing very revealing clothing, doing lots of provocative dances, and the camera is constantly like focusing really, really close. It's actually pretty disturbing, but not in the way. I don't feel like it's disturbing in the way the movie wanted it to be, because I just thought, what the hell was going through the minds of the people making this? It wasn't, oh my God, look what's happening to these poor kids. It's, what the hell are these filmmakers doing? This is awful. The lead character, like, the film is full of awful characters. The lead character, she never develops as a character. That's one of its biggest problems. She doesn't ever go through any kind of development. She just leaps back and forth between basically stupid decisions. She does one dumb thing, and then she just immediately leaps into some other dumb thing. It's very, very difficult to sympathise with her. It's very difficult to feel anything for her. And then, while the movie is supposed to be a commentary on like I say, the exploitation of young girls, it's like only in the last 10 minutes does the movie realise that that is actually a bad thing. Like, this whole time it was acting as if it's totally normal and good, and then the last 10 minutes it suddenly does this weird U-turn. Made no sense to us at all. Yeah, it's it's a movie that's destined for infamy, I'd say, but in our opinion it was just a bad movie. I guess it had, I don't know if I want to say its intentions were in the right place. I could kind of see what it was trying to do, but it just did it completely wrong. So Josh Trank has had a pretty interesting directorial career so far. He made Chronicle, which I really liked. He made Fantastic Four, or Fan Four Stick, which I didn't see but I heard was dreadful, and it basically, put him in movie director exile. And now he's come back with Capone. This was not the right move at all to get back on track. Capone is a very odd film. Tom Hardy stars in it, a guy who I love. I think Tom Hardy's a fantastic actor, but for some reason he keeps getting saddled with roles where you can barely understand what he's saying. Like in this, and then in Dunkirk, and in Mad Max, and Dark Knight Rises. Why does Tom Hardy keep appearing in movies where you can't understand what he's saying? He plays Al Capone, of course, in the last few years of his life, where he spends most of his time basically arguing with people and chomping on cigars. I don't know what the film was supposed to do. The whole thing feels like this really weird trip. It's supposed to be like a journey into his psyche, but it feels like it didn't have a clearly defined vision. It didn't really know where it was going to go. A lot of it feels like it was kind of made up on the spot. None of the characters are very likable, aside from Linda Cardellini's character. She's pretty good, but it's just tons and tons of flashbacks, lots of really ugly, incomprehensible dream sequences, and then Capone dies. I didn't feel anything for him. I didn't find out anything about him that I didn't know before. It was just an uninteresting film, told badly, and ended in a very unsatisfactory note. So I hope Josh Trank can come back and do something good in the future, but this was definitely a step in the wrong direction. So much like New Mutants, Artemis Fowl is a film that's been in development for a long time. So long, in fact, that when the rights to the book were actually acquired, the lead character in this movie wasn't even born yet. That's how long this thing has been in production. And it wasn't worth the wait at all. This is a very, very cluttered movie. Again, like New Mutants, this feels like setup to further films that we're never going to get to see now because the movie was so unsuccessful. I feel like the book series, there's so much lore, there's so much substance there. I reckon this should have been a TV show. This should have been a TV miniseries, maybe like 6 episodes at least. But no, it's all jammed into 1 hour and a half film. So a lot of the movie is just exposition. It's just trying to explain and trying to set up this world. But because it's all set up, nothing is done. Nothing really happens. Somebody makes a comment about fairy law. I'm like, what's fairy law? How is it enforced? How does it work? We never find out because I don't think it's even mentioned again. The kid who plays Artemis doesn't do a very good job. He seems like a very, very cold, very aloof character. Maybe that's how he was meant to be, but it makes it very difficult to care about him. The whole fairy world is badly explained. Dame Judi Dench is in this movie. It's really sad to see her there. But she looks like she's putting effort in, so there's always that. It's a giant CGI, a big, expensive CGI mess. That's the best way I can sum it up. Josh Gad's in the film as like the comic relief, but he's just annoying. He's just a really irritating character. He speaks like this all the time for some reason. It's just a huge misfire. I can't think of anything that was really done right in the film. I mean, it's a pretty movie. It looks very, very good, but by the time it had finished, I didn't know what happened. I didn't know why I was supposed to care about any of it. It was just a huge waste of time. Maybe they'll make more films in the future. It's very unlikely, unless they can get them back into cinemas. But as it is, Artemis Fowl is a huge wasted opportunity, and it's a shame. It could have been good if it had been a TV series, but as a film, it falls completely flat. It really, really does break my heart to put a Nicolas Cage film on this list. I'm a die-hard Cage fan. I'll watch pretty much any movie he's been in. He's been in a lot of crap, and he'll probably tell you so himself. But I just love seeing Nicolas Cage, especially when he's going, when he was full Nicolas Cage. He's just hilarious. Jiu-Jitsu is a complete waste of his talents, a complete and utter waste. This is one of those almost aggressively annoying movies. The plot is just to cobble together a bunch of sci-fi cliches. The central story is somewhat a rip-off of Predator, which is kind of weird. And I'll give Bruno Mattei some credit when he did his Predator rip-off Robo-War. I mean, that sucked, but at least it was somewhat enjoyable. You had Red Brown shouting all the time, so you had that. Jiu-Jitsu is mainly based around the lead character, whose name is Alan Moosey. I'm not sure if I'm saying that right. He's mostly a stuntman rather than an actor, and it really shows. He's dreadful in this film. He spends most of it kind of staring off with this really befuddled look on his face. There'll be scenes where characters will be saying something to him, and they'll be asking him questions, and he'll just stand like that, looking clueless. It's almost as if he kept forgetting his lines and they couldn't afford to reshoot the scene, or they just shot him separate and just composited him into the scene. But the film isn't really about jiu-jitsu, despite its title. The film is about this alien coming to Earth who, for some reason, decides to engage in hand-to-hand combat exchanges with people for some reason. And like I say, the alien is just like a Predator rip-off who keeps flashing its face for some reason. Cage does pretty much nothing in it. He's like the trainer, but like I say, he doesn't have much of a role in the film. Doesn't do anything very Nicolas Cagey, and then he dies. And it's a huge shame because he would have contributed a lot to this film, I think. I mean, the fight choreography is pretty good, but the fight scenes quickly become so mind-numbingly boring that even though the film is only an hour and a half long, it felt way, way longer. I just wanted it to end. I was getting so annoyed. Everything looked so stupid. Everything looked cheap. It was just such a pain to sit through, and I'm never going to watch it again. Even if Cage is in it, as much as great as he is, Cage just couldn't make this film work. When I seen this film back in June of last year, I think I knew then when it was finished that I wasn't going to get to see a film worse than that. Jiu-Jitsu came close. I considered putting it at number 1, but in pure objective terms, Ouija Shark was by far the worst thing I've seen this year. It was astoundingly bad. It looks like it's filmed on an iPhone. Amateur actors, a bunch of shots are out of focus. terrible storyline. Looks like it was made in an afternoon. Just really, really poor production values. Everything about it was bad. But it's one of those films, there's lots and lots of bad shark movies out there. Just as an example, there's one called Jurassic Shark. There's one called Raiders of the Lost Shark, Sharkenstein, and even Santa Jaws. So these are all the same kind of thing. They look cheap. They feel cheap. They probably cost about $20 to make. So a film like Ouija Shark is just going to get lost in the shuffle. It's not going to stand out in any way. So it seems kind of pointless to make it. But I guess if you're bored and you have a video camera, what else are you going to do? It's staggeringly incompetent. There's some things in the film. It's not even bad filmmaking technique. It's just general stupidity. For example, there's a scene where these two characters want to go sunbathing. They want to get a suntan. Makes sense. And it's a sunny day. So they strip off and then they lie down in the shade. How are you going to get a tan there? And the film is just full of stupid stuff like this. At the end, and near the end, when the ghost shark is flying up, this ghost shark from another dimension, people are attacking it with a shotgun. People are shooting it with a shotgun. It's damaging it. Why? It's a ghost shark. Why is it being hurt with a shotgun? That's a bit weak, isn't it? Yeah, not a lot else to say about it, really. It's Ouija Shark. For the first time in a couple of years, I've actually got a definitive #1. The last few years I wasn't really sure, but Ouija Shark was definitely the worst. I could have put Jiu-Jitsu here, but for pure objective reasons, yeah, Ouija Shark was definitely the worst film I've seen in 2020. It was just bloody awful. So that was my worst of list. Hope you enjoyed it. Put down in the comments below if you like what the worst films of 2020 you've seen were. And I'll be back pretty soon, not sure when, but should be pretty soon, with my best of 2020. So I'll see you then.